Walter Johnson had built his life brick by brick. A self-made man, a black entrepreneur in a city that knew his name. Johnson Construction, rental homes in West End, commercial lots in East Point. But his favorite place was the house in Buckhead, the one he built for Betty. They were high school sweethearts, married 42 years. No scandals, no separations, just Sundays at church, fried catfish after, jazz on the porch. Then heart failure took her in her sleep. No goodbyes, just silence. His children tried to lift him. They visited more. They called daily. But it wasn't enough. Most nights, he sat at the long oak table, 2 plates, 2 glasses, 2 folded napkins, talking to her picture like she never left. Marcus, his eldest, begged him to get out of the house. Jasmine, his daughter, suggested a dog. He didn't want one. Instead, he agreed to try the gym. An upscale fitness club in Buckhead. Polished floors, eucalyptus towels, personal trainers in branded tracksuits. Walter hated it. Said he felt old. But he went. That's where he met her. Simone. Tight ponytail. Perfect smile. A little too eager. She dropped a pair of dumbbells right near his bench. Apologized 3 times. Said she never saw him there before. By the end of that workout, she'd offered to help him stretch. Told him how proud he was showing up for himself. He smiled for the first time in weeks. And then came the questions. Small talk, really. Was he local? Did he live alone? Was his wife into fitness too? Most wouldn't have noticed. But she watched him closely when he answered. He said no. Betty passed. He lived in Buckhead now. Just him and the memories. Simone nodded, like she already knew. What started as post-workout smoothies turned into Sunday brunches. A few missed calls became nightly talks. He hadn't moved on, but he was moving forward. His kids didn't trust it. Jasmine especially. She said Simone asked too many questions. That she touched things in the house she shouldn't. But Walter said she was just being kind. He didn't know she'd already been married twice. That both times ended in settlements. That she once worked for a man she now pretends not to know. That she hadn't spoken to her own parents in years. All Walter saw was someone who made the house feel full again. But everyone who knew him felt something else. Something they couldn't name. And no one, not even Simone, could have predicted how fast it would all unravel. Because what started as a hello would end with a funeral. And not everyone crying would be telling the truth. By the end of the first month, Simone wasn't just helping Walter stretch. She was designing his entire workout plan. They met at the gym 5 days a week. She brought him protein bars and green juices. She joked that she was going to get him beach ready for summer, and he laughed like a man who hadn't laughed in a long time. Soon, she started coming by the house. At first, it was just to drop off a meal or check on his blood pressure. Then she stayed to help him organize the garage. Then she stayed to cook. Then she stayed overnight. Just until her apartment lease ended. She said. She never signed another lease. Walter changed. Slowly at first. His suits were sharper. His shoes cleaner. He replaced the jazz with soft R&B. He told Marcus he was thinking about traveling again. He told Jasmine he felt like himself for the first time in years. He didn't mention that Simone had started choosing his clothes. They went out more. Fancy restaurants. Art shows. A quick weekend in Charleston. People stared. Walter said it was because he looked good again. Simone said it was because people couldn't believe a man his age still had charm. He laughed at that, too. She called him her rock. Said he reminded her of the man her father should have been. Then she'd go quiet. Talk about the years she spent watching her mother struggle alone. She never asked Walter for anything directly. She just made him feel like he was saving her. It worked. He gave her access to the home office computer. Helped her apply for a small business grant under her name. She wanted to start a wellness brand. Said she wanted to give back to women who felt lost. Walter funded the whole thing, without hesitation. When Marcus pushed back, Walter told him he was overreacting. That he was being ungrateful. That Betty wouldn't want them questioning someone who had brought so much light into his life. He didn't notice the mail that started arriving in Simone's name. Or maybe he did, but didn't care. She had a way of explaining everything before anyone could ask. a way of making her presence seem like it had always been meant to be. By month 3, she was managing the household schedule, Walter's calendar, his prescriptions. She even began answering his calls when he stepped away. Most people thought they were married already, but there were gaps, moments that didn't line up. A business meeting she claimed to attend that didn't exist. A childhood friend no one could verify. Jasmine noticed first and kept the details to herself. She started writing things down. License plates, names, dates. She smiled in front of Simone, but at night, she made copies of anything that looked unusual, because something about the whole relationship felt rehearsed. And Jasmine was starting to wonder if her father had fallen for a story someone else had written. Marcus didn't like her from the start. As a corporate attorney, he was used to watching for patterns, fast moves, vague answers, sudden changes in behavior. Simone checked too many boxes. But every time he tried to talk to his father, the conversation ended with silence. Or worse, with Walter defending her. Jasmine noticed something else. It wasn't just the way Simone rearranged the kitchen or took over the family calendar. It was the jewelry. Betty's brooch. A pearl ring that never left her mother's nightstand. A silk scarf folded just like Betty used to wear it. Simone didn't ask. She just wore them. They waited for Thanksgiving. Jasmine cooked. Marcus brought wine. They sat at the family table, hoping to reason with their father, hoping he would listen. But the evening unraveled quickly. Jasmine asked about the jewelry. Simone smiled and said Walter had given it to her. Marcus brought up the joint accounts, the sudden changes to the household staff, the new legal documents he'd seen in Walter's study. Simone didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She looked at Walter and said she didn't feel safe, that his children were trying to control him, that maybe they didn't respect his happiness. Walter stood up and told Marcus and Jasmine to leave. He said they were crossing a line. He said he was done being managed like an old man who didn't know what was best for him. And for the first time in their lives, he turned his back on both of them. They left the house that night in silence. 2 weeks later, Walter proposed. He did it quietly. No big gestures. Just a note on the bathroom mirror and a small box tucked into Simone's gym bag. She said yes before he finished the sentence. The wedding was fast. A private ceremony at a vineyard outside Atlanta. A few close friends. A pastor who didn't ask questions. Marcus came out of obligation. Jasmine sat in the back and didn't speak a word. Walter smiled through the entire ceremony. He looked thinner, but happy. He toasted to second chances and to Betty, whom he said would have wanted him to keep living. Some nodded. Others glanced at Simone, who never looked away from the camera. That night, after the last guest left, Simone slipped away to the guest room. Her voice low. "Come. Just 4 words. Phase 1 complete," she whispered into the phone. Devin Williams had been managing Walter's accounts for years. Trusted. Quiet. Thorough. He handled real estate transactions, payroll for the construction company, and retirement distributions. But after the wedding, something changed. There were new transfers. Large ones. Vague descriptions. A private account opened under Simone's name, with Walter listed as a secondary holder. It wasn't illegal, but it wasn't like Walter. Devin flagged it. Thought maybe Walter was making early wedding gifts. But then he saw the updated will. 80% to Simone. 10% each to Marcus and Jasmine. No trust fund. No charitable donations. Betty's endowments to her church and alma mater? Gone. Devin didn't say anything right away. He waited. Watched. Then he saw something else. 3 life insurance policies. All active. All new. Each listing Simone as the sole beneficiary. The combined total? Just under $2 million. That night, Devin called Marcus. The next morning, Marcus called a private investigator. He wanted addresses, court records, school transcripts. Anything. It took less than a week to find the first red flag. Simone Carter didn't exist. Not legally. Not before 2014. Her real name was Simone Williams. Born in Tampa. Changed her name after a domestic dispute with a man twice her age. No convictions. No follow-up. But there was more. In 2015, she lived in Miami. married a retired dentist named Howard Lane. He died of what the coroner called cardiac complications 17 months later. She inherited his condo and life insurance payout. Moved to Charlotte 6 months after the funeral. There she married again. A former judge named Arthur Bell. Same pattern. Whirlwind courtship. Private wedding. Arthur died in his sleep. 17 months later. No charges were ever filed. But in Arthur's case, a neighbor had reported hearing a loud argument the night before he died. No autopsy was performed. The death certificate listed natural causes. The investigator found that report. Filed and ignored. One handwritten note underlined in red. Suspicious. No follow-up. Marcus printed every page. He didn't sleep that night. And in the morning, he drove straight to Jasmine's house. Jasmine hadn't spoken to her father in weeks. Not since the wedding. But after Marcus showed her the report, she knew waiting wasn't an option. She started watching. Quietly. She drove by the house at odd hours. Checked Simone's social media for clues. Nothing obvious. Until a tagged photo from a private account caught her eye. A dinner table. A wine glass. And in the corner, just out of focus, Simone's necklace. The location was a quiet restaurant in Midtown. Expensive. Discreet. Jasmine waited outside the next evening. And just before 9, Simone arrived. She wasn't alone. A younger man pulled out her chair. They didn't touch, but they leaned in too close. Smiled too often. Jasmine watched from her car. She didn't plan to record anything. But when the man placed a phone on the table, speaker on, she hit record. Simone's voice was clear. "He's healthier than expected," she said. "Might take longer than we thought. But if we tweak the dosage, we can keep it looking natural." The man nodded. Mentioned a timeline. A payout date. She told him to be patient. That she'd already adjusted his sleeping meds. That it was only a matter of time. Jasmine sat frozen. Then she ended the recording and drove straight to Marcus. There was no doubt anymore. Simone wasn't just taking over their father's life. She was planning to end it. And unless they acted quickly, Walter would never see it coming. Jasmine didn't sleep that night. She listened to the recording over and over, hoping she'd misunderstood, hoping there was another explanation. But each time, the words were clearer. There was no mistake. Marcus said they needed to go to the police. But Jasmine hesitated. The recording was vague. No names. No direct threats. And she knew how easily it could be dismissed as a misunderstanding. Or worse, a daughter angry about being cut from the will. She wanted proof. Real proof. A confession. The next day, Walter had a follow-up appointment with his cardiologist. Routine. Simone reminded him to take his vitamins and packed his overnight bag in case the doctor wanted to observe him. Jasmine saw her chance. At 10:32 a.m., she pulled into the driveway of the Buckhead house. Simone's car was still there. She entered through the side door with a spare key, pressed record on her phone, and walked into the kitchen like she belonged there. Simone was at the counter, blending something green. She didn't look surprised. "You shouldn't be here," she said. Calm. Cold. Jasmine kept her voice steady. She said she knew everything. The other marriages. The will. The life insurance. The recording from the restaurant. Simone didn't deny it. She didn't panic. She just tilted her head and smiled. "Your father loves me," she said. "He made his choice. Maybe you should learn to live with it." Jasmine asked about the pills. About the timeline. About what Simone planned to do next. Simone didn't answer. She walked toward the sink, turned on the tap, and rinsed out the glass. Then she reached for her phone. Jasmine thought this was it. The moment. She stepped forward, still recording, still hoping for something, anything, that would make it impossible to explain away. What happened next wasn't part of any plan. Simone moved toward the hallway. Jasmine stepped in front of her. Neither of them spoke for a moment. Then Simone reached for her purse. Jasmine told her to stop. Simone kept walking. Jasmine blocked the door. She said she wasn't leaving until Simone admitted the truth. Simone laughed. Said no one would believe her. Said the house belonged to her now. Then she moved fast. Opened a drawer. Pulled out a kitchen knife. She didn't lunge. She didn't scream. She just held it between them, steady and quiet. She told Jasmine to move. Jasmine said no. There was a struggle. Short, sharp. Jasmine reached for the blade, tried to twist it away. In the struggle, Simone lost her balance. Jasmine pushed her back. Simone slipped. Her head struck the corner of the marble counter. Hard. Then everything stopped. Jasmine stood frozen, the knife on the floor. Simone wasn't moving. Blood pooled beneath her head. One eye open. Still. She dropped her phone. The recording stopped. For a full minute, she didn't move. She thought about calling Marcus. Then 911. Then her father. But none of those things happened. Instead, Jasmine wiped the counter, picked up the knife, removed Simone's purse from the hallway. She pulled open the dishwasher, turned it on, arranged Simone's body near the pantry, slipped a towel beneath her head, placed a broken glass nearby. When Walter came home, she was gone, and Simone was already cold. Walter returned home just before 5. He called out as he stepped inside. No answer. He walked into the kitchen and found her there, face down, still, a broken glass near her hand, a towel stained with blood. He called 911, his voice shaking. He told them she must have slipped, that she'd been preparing something, that the marble floor was always too slick. When the police arrived, there were no signs of forced entry, no defensive wounds, no immediate suspicion of foul play. The coroner marked the cause of death as blunt force trauma from a fall. Walter was told it was a tragic accident. He cried at the scene. He blamed himself for not being home sooner. Jasmine watched it all from a distance. She didn't return to the house. She didn't attend the second funeral. She told Marcus she couldn't bear it. But inside, she felt everything. Relief. That her father was safe. That Simone's plan would never reach the finish line. And horror. At the silence she'd created. At the secret she now carried. She deleted the recording. Burned the clothes she wore that day. She told herself it was self-defense. That no jury would have seen it differently. But each time she closed her eyes, she saw the moment Simone fell. The sound. The stillness. And no matter how many times she replayed it, the ending never changed. In the days that followed, Marcus tried to move on. He told himself it was over. That Simone was gone and his father was safe. But something didn't sit right. Jasmine changed. She barely answered his calls. When she did, her voice was clipped, distracted. She wasn't sleeping. She missed work. She avoided the house. At first, Marcus thought it was just a shock. Then he asked Devin to pull the home security logs. Just to be sure. What they found wasn't dramatic. No forced entry. No unknown visitors. But there was one detail. Jasmine's car, parked in the driveway from 10:30 to 12:12. Exactly when Walter was at the doctor's office. Exactly when Simone died. Marcus didn't call her. He didn't confront her. He sent the footage to Devin and said nothing else. Devin waited 2 days. Then he asked Jasmine to meet him for coffee. She didn't speak for the first 10 minutes. When he showed her the photo of her car, she didn't flinch. She just looked down and said, "I thought I could live with it." Then she told him everything, from the restaurant recording, to the decision to confront Simone, to the push, the fall, the silence. She left nothing out. She didn't ask him to lie. She didn't ask for help. She just said she couldn't carry it alone anymore. Devin didn't respond right away. He just sat back, trying to understand the line between justice and guilt. And what came next would test them both. Jasmine walked into the precinct alone. No lawyer. No statement prepared. She asked to speak with a detective and said she had information about Simone Williams's death. In the interrogation room, she told them everything. Calmly. Quietly. From the restaurant recording, to the fight in the kitchen, to the moment Simone hit the counter. She didn't ask for sympathy. She didn't cry. She only asked that her father not be present when they came for her. When the police called Walter, they didn't explain much. Just that his daughter had come forward. That her account didn't match the original report. He arrived at the station confused. Then he heard the words. Manslaughter. Self-defense. Concealment. He didn't say a word for several minutes. Just stared at the floor. When he finally spoke, his voice broke. "She was trying to protect me," he said, "and I never saw any of it coming." For Walter, It was two betrayals at once. The woman he thought he loved had lied to him from the start, and the daughter he raised to be careful and composed had killed someone in his home and hidden the truth. The DA reviewed the case. The struggle, the intent, the recording Jasmine later recovered from cloud backup. It was enough to avoid trial. Jasmine was charged with voluntary manslaughter. She accepted a plea deal. No contest. 5 years, with parole eligibility after 2. She didn't fight it. She said she didn't want to spend the rest of her life explaining why she did what she did, only that she wished she had done it differently. Walter visited her once before sentencing. They sat across from each other in silence. He didn't ask questions. She didn't explain. When he stood to leave, he placed a folded photo on the table. It was of Betty, standing on their front porch, holding Jasmine as a baby. He said only one thing. She would have tried to protect me too. The court considered everything. The audio recording, Simone's past, the way Jasmine came forward on her own. They didn't excuse her actions, but they understood the fear that drove them. The sentence was reduced. Walter withdrew from the public eye. He sold the Buckhead house, closed the office where Betty's portrait still hung. He no longer answered calls from old business partners. The man who had once built a legacy across the city now kept mostly to himself. He had loved and lost twice. Once to death, once to deception. And now, the only daughter he had left was behind bars for protecting him. Marcus took on more than he ever expected, managing the family's estate, helping his father with doctor appointments, visiting Jasmine each month. He never said much during those visits. He just listened, and stayed until the guards made him leave. One afternoon, Walter finally returned. He sat across from Jasmine, older, tired. He held a book of Betty's recipes in his hand. Jasmine smiled when she saw it. He told her he'd been thinking about Sunday dinners, about the way Betty always made room for one more chair. He said forgiveness wasn't something you say. It's something you show. Then he reached across the table and took her hand. And for the first time in months, Jasmine exhaled. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, or made you think, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment below. We'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you know someone who should hear this story, share it with them. Check out the videos at the end screen for more real stories that matter. Until next time.